Yo, what's up, guys? It's your boy Bernie here, along with Pete. And again, we're back at it with the charge, bringing you the latest NBA news and rumors that are concerns about basketball. Of course, NBA is basketball, so I don't know why I just said that, but you know, it is what it is. Let's get right into the charge, guys.
Boom.
James. LeBron James all the way in.
And here comes Simmons the other way. 3-on-2. Simmons eludes the defender and lays it in with that. Certainly the length altered that shot. Out of the quick steps and crutches.
Play right there.
Porzingis from Jennings. Thrown out and a foul.
Irving, splits the defense with the dribble.
Eric Bledsoe. Hit us with the news, Bernie.
All right, if you guys don't know, Eric Bledsoe just got traded to the Milwaukee Bucks from the Phoenix Suns for a Bucks. So what happened is that Eric Bledsoe is going to go to the Bucks. The Suns get Greg Monroe, a first-round pick, and a second-round pick. But I believe those have conditions on them.
Yeah.
Do you have
a lot of conditions? So the first round pick has do we want to get super specific with the numbers? Because I think it's like if the Bucks pick in the first round this year lands between 11 and 16, the Suns get it. If it lands between 4 and 16 in 2019, they get it. And between 8 and 30 in 2020, they get it. And then if it goes all the way past 2020 and they still haven't gotten one based on those circumstances, it's an unprotected pick. Then their second round pick, if it's not between 48 and 60 in this upcoming draft, they don't get it ever. Ever. It's just off the table. Which I think is that's a gamble for the Suns. But I do think they got a lot more value for Eric Bledsoe than they probably could have in other ways.
Yeah, because, I mean, like we said, I think we reported it on another charge. We were talking about the Knicks being perhaps interested in the Eric Bledsoe. But, you know, there was a lot to give up for the Knicks, so they weren't going to give the Knicks weren't going to give up Frank Ntilikina and also, like, maybe a first round, or Hernan Gomez as well.
Or a first round pick.
Which there's none of the question. So if we think about it of who won and lost this trade between the Bucks and the Suns, I think it was a fair trade. Because if we look at it, Greg Monroe only has 1 year left on his contract, and I know it's a pretty meaty contract, so you get that off the books.
Yeah.
You also have an aging Tyson Chandler if you want to bring in Greg Monroe instead of Tyson Chandler, who's also eating a lot of your cap. You can get rid of him and bring in Greg Monroe for a discounted price if he takes it.
Yeah.
Eric Bledsoe is I think it's a good pickup for the Bucks because of the way that he has 2 years left on his contract, so you're not completely screwed. You get 2 years with him.
Yeah.
And whether or not he does well or not is up to you. But this Bucks team with him, I think he's like 27, 28. Mm-hmm. Not a bad start, especially with this ascension from Giannis.
Yeah.
And along with the rest of the team, you also have Jabari Parker, who will come back from his injury at some point. So, you know, more bodies in there for him. So, I think if who won and lost, I think the Bucks win based on the mere fact that there's so many conditions and stipulations on that first-round pick that it's hard to argue the Suns winning because they're in rebuild mode and they will always be in rebuild mode.
I'll say this for the Suns, though. I think they did come out of it pretty well because they're never going to play Bledsoe again. So, considering that they got the value they did out of him, Greg Monroe is a serviceable big man. He's not bad.
Right.
He's definitely pretty average, but he's better than what they have. He's definitely better than Tyson Chandler. Have you seen Tyson Chandler play this year?
I've seen him play a couple games.
Not good. He plays like a 60-year-old man.
Well, yeah. I mean, we saw the game. Sorry, just to interrupt.
No, you're good.
But, you know, we saw the game when he played the Lakers in the third one, and you know, where he's supposed to be this defensive stopper, especially when he was on the Dallas Mavericks team that won the championship. Mm-hmm. And we saw they really didn't play in defense because Lonzo went off for 29, which is not a normal...
Which is 29 more points than he usually gets.
Yeah. Maybe 20.
20 more points than he usually gets. I was making a Lonzo joke, even though we're the ones who defend him on this channel. But, yeah, considering they got Greg Monroe, who's not a bad player, but they also got picks. Like, they don't really need Eric Bledsoe. Eric Bledsoe's not going to elevate the Suns ever. If he did decide, you know what, I'm sorry I was a little harsh on you guys. I do want to play for the Suns. What value does he bring to their team, really? Because he's already at the point where by the time their rebuild has started to take effect, he's going to be 31 or 32.
Right.
it's going to take a while for the Suns. So get some picks, start stacking them up. Even if they don't get that first-round pick this year, it'll probably happen the next year because the range gets bigger and bigger each year. So just I would be pretty happy for them. Plus they have Devin Booker on their team. Like, let him just be the main guy and start working his magic, you know?
Right.
Let him grow as a player on a bad team. It actually does help some players sometimes. Like, I think Harden got a lot of benefit from being kind of the guy on his team when he left the Thunder. So it could be good for Devin Booker, and the Suns got rid of a guy who didn't want to be there anyway and got a first, a second-round pick, and a serviceable big guy.
Yeah. I just think with like looking at everything, I do believe that the Suns need to fire the GM. They need to fire the coach and just restart again because obviously what they've been doing for their plan has not been working. I mean, if they want to replicate the 76ers plan where they get like 20,000 first-round picks, that might be the go-to move. But I just think you need a fresh new face there. Devin Booker is like your main guy now, so build around him. See if he can have that jump like Giannis had, where he's averaging maybe like 28, 27 points a game.
Yeah, he can do it too. The boy can score for sure.
And that's what we hope to see from Devin Booker. I like Devin Booker as a player. I just hope that the Suns are willing to invest in him and not this kind of half-assed rebuild that they tried to do this past couple years now.
Yeah, I mean, this trade, I'll agree with you. I'll say it's a fair trade. I think it worked out on both sides. The Bucks got something they needed, which is a point guard to help out Giannis with the ball. And then the Suns just got rid of a guy who didn't want to be there. And they got a lot of value for him, too, considering he was not playing. I mean, I feel like as an NBA general manager, if you see a dude go out the way that Bledsoe did in Phoenix, mind you, he's on an awful team who doesn't really appreciate him, I guess, which who knows the whole story behind the scenes. But I feel like I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of the teams were playing hardball for Bledsoe, Yeah. Because they weren't going to play him anyway. So the Suns were in between a rock and a hard place where what are they going to do with him for the whole season if nobody wants to come and get him? And what if the teams don't want to offer, like, as a whole unit, all the NBA teams who would get him don't want to offer what they want. So they could have gotten a lot worse out of the deal.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, they're in a hard place where they can't really negotiate.
Yeah.
Based on the fact that he didn't want to play there anymore and he was fine not playing and just practicing. So, whatever value you could get for him, the better. And I think they got probably the best deal they could get.
Yeah.
Where it's other teams, I'm assuming maybe the Cavs probably didn't even offer nearly as much if they were interested in him.
Yeah, I don't think the Cavs would ever have offered that much. Because think of an equivalent player for Greg Monroe in that trade. They don't have anybody like that they can spare right now. And they're not giving up a first and second round pick. So
yeah.
The Knicks aren't doing it either. I guess the Bucks did it just they want to win now with Giannis. So more power to him. I don't see it's a good plan.
Yeah.
It's a good role player to go along with Giannis.
Pretty much. Let's move on to another trade rumor that we have, and it's not official yet, but it's something that a lot of talks were happening. So there was a deal between there was an interest from Boston to get Jahlil Okafor, but the Boston Celtics have no interest in it because they don't want to give up the first round pick. They're like a first round pick that they want, that the 76ers want, because they already have like a stash of first round picks. It's not, what's one more going to hurt the 76ers?
Yeah.
What do you think of just like how the team is built, the Celtics team? How do you think Okafor would have fit in if he was able to sign with the Celtics?
I think we might have talked about this last week a little bit, but I think Okafor doesn't get enough credit. I think his post game is really good. He's just not like the prototype of super athletic big in the NBA right now. So people are really hard on the guy for not being that athletic big. But I think he's better than people are giving him credit for. What is he, 21 years old?
Yeah, 21.
He's super young. If he had time to develop somewhere, he could end up still being a pretty above average center in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So I feel like the Celtics could have used him, definitely. And I think didn't they come out and say, like, if we did get him, he would be more of a project player or something along those lines? If they could do that, it would be really good for the kid. And I think they could use somebody like him, not for a first-round pick, though.
Yeah. Like you said, a first-round pick is just way too much for a Jahlil Okafor. You know, when he first came out of the draft, I was a big fan of his, and I thought he would have been a real big beast.
Yeah, I agree.
And, you know, the problem was that they also took Joel Embiid, who is kind of has a higher ceiling than Jahlil.
For sure.
So it's kind of one of those things where it's like you have a good player, but you have a B+ player, but you also have this A+ potential player, and you want to play the A+ potential player so he could grow to get there at some point. And, you know, Jahlil Okafor is a good player. You know, hasn't really played that much, only like 22 minutes this season, so obviously not getting out of the rotation in the 76ers lineup.
Yeah.
Probably should be traded. I'm sure the 76ers will trade him away. You know, other places I've heard are the Bulls, the Hawks, and even the Bucks are interested in Jahlil since they lost Greg Monroe.
Mm-hmm. That's not a bad shout either. I think he would do very well on the Bucks team.
Yeah. So, you know, he has options. There's multiple teams interested in him. It just depends on what's the price for him. Yeah. And that's going to be up to the 76ers to decide that, because what more do they want or need when they already have 2 first-round picks next year? A lot of good players, young players as well, so you need them to grow and develop. So you probably don't want anyone that'll steal minutes from these guys, especially the 76ers guys. So you don't want anyone to steal those minutes. So you have to decide what's going to be the best deal for you guys. Is it going to be like this aging veteran that comes in and helps you?
Yeah.
Or if it's just another young player, which would be very stupid in my opinion. But, you know, 76ers trust the process.
Yeah. And I'll say this too. I think the post game, I just said this, is very underappreciated right now in the NBA. And if you go back and watch LeBron's performance against the Wizards on Friday, I don't even remember what day of the month that was. Was that the first?
Yeah, I think so.
When LeBron played the Wizards and put up his 57-point game, he murdered them in the post. He was dominating them. Because the NBA is liking to play like these teams are playing small right now. So if you have a big guy who can dominate in the post, I think it's just an underappreciated art in the NBA. Because think of, like, I know the Warriors have a great defense. They're a small team, really, other than KD, who's 7 foot. But he's not the defensive monster. You know, he's not a defensive monster. If you could have a guy who could dominate the post, that's easy points against a tiny team.
Yeah, and like we said, the only thing is about that, I do understand that the post game can work in the NBA, and I think that's a lot of people have discussed that as like the counter to this kind of small game. But it's up to the team and the players to dictate that pace, and I think teams don't do that well enough because they play through their point guards instead of the big men that they have. So, for example, like when we talk about the Pelicans with both Davis and Cousins, I don't think they do well enough. Well, especially because when they go back on defense, those two guys are fine. But the problem is the other guys, like the point guards with Holiday and I can't even remember who else is on that team. But you know, the guards are getting outplayed by the other guards in the league, and it's a guard-heavy league right now. So those guys are getting outplayed. So you have to play from behind sometimes. So you can't really dictate the pace. But it's up to the team to right away just dictate the pace, get the post going, get that action going between those two guys. Especially if those are your two best players, play those guys inside. I mean, of course you're gonna have the outside shot. It's there. Cousins can hit, Davis can hit, but you got to make sure that your team is built for it.
Yeah. Well, let's use the Bucks. If they got Jahlil Okafor, you can't tell me that Giannis and Bledsoe are gonna get outpaced by people, right? So you could try and find a balance with those two dudes and Jahlil Okafor if he was to develop a little bit better, and then have him utilize his post game with those guys working on the outside.
Right.
It's money.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you know, it's just a wait and see who's going to get Jahlil. If going back to the original topic, if Jahlil is going to be, Like, we're gonna see what the asking price is for Jaleel because we've yet to find out what it is.
Yeah, I do think he hasn't had a fair shake in the NBA. Certainly not with the 76ers. So give him a little bit more credit. Let him work his magic somewhere else and try and do something. And we haven't seen the last of this kid. He's gonna do something in the NBA
For sure.